Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is a reading of Dear Martin by Nick Stone, and this is me and Kobe, and this is chapter 22. Sitting on the witness stand, Just wishes he could go back to the days when all he had to worry about was his mama not liking his girlfriend. The DA's Mr. Ritson's questioning is running pretty smooth, and Mama, Doc, the Riverses, and the Freedmans are all in the gallery to support him. But testifying with his best friend's murderer glowering at him from 20 feet away, it's the hardest thing he's ever had to do. By the time Mr. Ritson finishes his questions, the court has heard the tragic tale of two college bound African American boys gunned down at a traffic light by an angry white man who used a racial slur and fired his weapon at them when they did not comply with his demands. Just, with tears in his eyes, recounts the final minutes of Manny's life. And for a second, he's tempted to relax, especially when Doc gives him a thumbs up from where he's sitting. But then, the defense attorney, a short white lady with blonde hair and an upturned nose, steps up to the podium. She and Just lock eyes. He can tell she's out for blood. Mr. McAllister, she begins, all cool, calm, and collected. Isn't it true that at the beginning of your story, you stated that you and Emmanuel Rivers were just driving around? It is. That's not what you originally intended to do, though, is it? I'm not sure I understand the question, Just says. When Mr. Rivers retrieved you from your dormitory on January 26th, you had no idea you were getting into his car for the sake of driving around, did you? No. So what? So there were other plans then? Just gulps. Yes, there were. What were they? We were supposed to go hiking. But you didn't go hiking, did you? No. Emmanuel Rivers didn't feel up to hiking anymore, is that correct? Let me remind you that you are under oath, Mr. McAllister. Just clears his throat. No, Manny didn't feel up to hiking. Did he mention why? He did. He'd gotten a phone call that morning, correct? Yes, he had. And you're aware of what the phone call was about? Just sighs and drops his head. I am. I'm sorry, it's difficult to hear you when you don't speak into the microphone. Can you repeat that? I said, I am. You are what, Mr. McAllister? I'm aware of what the phone call was about. Enlighten us, if you will, please. Just looks at Mr. Rivers, who has his jaw clenched so tight it wouldn't surprise Just if his teeth were cracking. He'd gotten a phone call from his friend's father, Just says. That's a bit vague. I'm sure you can be more specific. What could this friend's father have mentioned that would have been so distressing to Mr. Rivers he'd no longer feel up to hiking? Just clenches his teeth. A disagreement. A disagreement involving whom? Manny and the friend. Interesting. She shuffles her papers on the podium. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a police report filed on January 26th that alleges Emmanuel Rivers physically attacked a Mr. Jerry Christensen on Monday, January 21st. Mr. Rivers is shooting eye daggers at the attorney. It wasn't like that, Just says. The attorney's eyebrows rise. Oh, it wasn't? No. Which part of the report is incorrect? Manny didn't attack Jared. So you were there to witness this disagreement? Just drops his head again. No. We can't hear you, Mr. McCallum. I said no. So you can't be completely sure Mr. Rivers didn't attack Mr. Christensen. Manny wasn't that type of guy. What type of guy? The type who attacks people unprovoked. So you're suggesting there was provocation? Yes, there was. What makes you so sure? Because Manny told me. Just sees SJ close her eyes, and he realizes his mistake. I mean, so Mr. Rivers did in fact inform you that he'd assaulted Jared Christensen. Just doesn't respond. Mr. McAllister? Justice just stares at her. Your Honor, answer the question, Mr. McAllister, the judge says. Justice clears his throat. Yes, Manny told me Jared made an inappropriate joke, so he hit him. Who hit whom? Manny hit Jared. The attorney nods. Sounds like a fairly familiar set of circumstances, doesn't it, Mr. McAllister? Objection, Mr. Rinson says. The question is ambiguous. Sustained, says the judge. I'll rephrase, she says. You were involved in a similar altercation on the night of January 18th, correct? You'll have to be more specific, Just says. The attorney doesn't miss a beat. I have a statement here from a Mr. Blake Benson alleging that you assaulted him and Jared Christensen unprovoked at Mr. Benson's home the night of January 18th. SJ bites her lip. Do you deny this accusation, Mr. McAllister? It wasn't unprovoked. Are you saying you didn't assault Blake Benson at his own birthday party? No. So you did assault Blake Benson and Jared Christensen? Well, yes, but I was provoked. She actually smiles. You arrived at Blake Benson's house with Emmanuel Rivers, and within 10 minutes, you started an argument with Mr. Benson, correct? I didn't start the argument. He did. She looks down at the podium. It says here that Mr. Benson asked you and Mr. Rivers to come meet a young lady he was interested in. Is this true? No. Oh, it's not? He wasn't interested in her. He just wanted to get her in bed. Mr. Benson said those exact words? No, but he implied. I see. So the young lady was a friend of yours, and you were defending her honor then. I didn't know the girl, but you were jealous then. What? No. For whatever reason, you didn't like that Blake Benson wanted to take this girl to bed, so you assaulted him. That's not how it happened. Ah, that's right. Jared Christensen came over to defend Blake Benson, whom you were threatening at his own birthday party, and so you assaulted both of them. That's not what happened. Maintain your composure, Mr. McAllister, the judge says. Just breathes in deep and looks at SJ. She nods. Tell me something, the lawyer says. After you attacked Jared Christensen and Blake Benson, Emmanuel Rivers reprimanded you, correct? He sided with the victims of your unprovoked assault. I already told you I didn't attack them. Well, you certainly didn't wish Mr. Benson a happy birthday, did you? Some words were exchanged that led to an altercation. Can you be more specific, Mr. McAllister? Just looks at Garrett. A lot has happened since then. Can't say I remember very clearly. Are you having difficulty remembering due to more recent events or because you were illegally intoxicated? Objection, Your Honor, says Mr. Ritson. Overruled. Had you been drinking on the night of January 18th, Mr. McAllister? She presses. Just sighs. Yes, I have. And you hit Jared Christensen and Blake Benson, correct? They were making racist comments. A simple yes or no will do. Just can feel Mama's gaze. Yes. The defense attorney nods. Mr. McAllister, now that we've established that both you and Mr. Rivers had a history of responding violently to perceived verbal slights, let's return to January 26th of this year. How familiar are you with the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances? Not very. Your Honor, I would like to enter the following into evidence. She pulls a sheet of paper from her stack and walks over to the witness stand. Mr. McAllister, read Article 4, Section 74-133 aloud for the court, please. It's highlighted there for you. Just looks into the crowd. Mama and Mrs. Friedman both seem on the verge of hopping the rail and smacking Garrett's attorney. He reads, above certain levels, noise or noise disturbance is detrimental to the health and welfare of the citizenry and the individual's rights to peaceful and quiet enjoyment. Therefore, it is hereby declared to be the policy of the city to prohibit noise disturbances from all sources. Would you say your loud music was in violation of this ordinance, Mr. McAllister? What does this have to do with your client shooting me and my best friend? Judge, please advise the witness that I'm the one asking questions. Now even Doc looks pissed. Watch your tone, Mr. McAllister, the judge says. My client is an officer of the law, Mr. McAllister. By refusing by refusing to lower the volume of your music, you were in direct opposition to a police order. We didn't know he was a police officer. He didn't show us a badge, and yet the ordinance clearly states that noise disturbance violates the rights of others to peace and quiet. But of course, you and your friend couldn't have cared less about anyone else's rights, could you? Just doesn't respond. Mr. McAllister, did your friend Emmanuel Rivers turn the music up when he was asked to turn it down? Yes. Did the music you were listening to contain the line, "Here comes the fun, wait for the sound of the gun"? Yes, but that's out of context. Did Mr. Rivers use foul language and make an obscene gesture toward my client that you would have perceived as a threat? I don't know what your client thought. I'm not him. Are you aware that my client witnessed the shooting death of his partner by a young man physically similar to yourself? That doesn't have anything to do with me. Oh, but it does, she says, because you had contact with this young man back in March, didn't you? Just sighs. Dr. Rivers shuts her eyes and shakes her head. Yes, I did, but. And that young man, Quan Banks, I believe his name is, connected you to a group of young men with extensive criminal records and known gang affiliations, yes? Yes, but. And you met with these young men shortly before they deliberately set my client's house on fire. Is that correct? It is, but I didn't have anything to do with that. No further questions, Your Honor. Garrett Tyson's Garrett Tyson, murderer? The jury is still out. By Ariel Tragetti. Yesterday morning, a Georgia jury found former Atlanta police officer Garrett Tyson guilty on 3 of the 4 charges related to the January incident in which he was accused of shooting 2 teenage boys after an argument over the volume of music. After 27 hours of deliberation, Tyson was convicted of 2 misdemeanors, disorderly conduct and discharge of a pistol near a public highway, and aggravated assault, the less severe of the 2 felonies. The jury was unable to reach a consensus regarding the felony murder charge, and a mistrial was declared on that count. Tyson testifies that he feared for his life, citing 27 years of law enforcement experience in support of his ability to detect a genuine threat. Though Tyson's claim that the teens had a gun was unsupported by evidence, the surviving teen, Justice McAllister's exposed connection to known gang members, including 16-year-old Quan Banks, the young man charged with murdering Tyson's partner last August, cast a considerable pall over the proceedings. Mr. Tyson will be retried on the murder count and sentenced on all convictions at a later date. All right, that's the end of chapter 22, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't.